Thank you so much for joining me and designing healthy environments. I am Alicia Ponce, principal and founder of APMonarch. We are architects and sustainability consultants. And I have the pleasure of working with you on a project that is LEED V4. We're currently pursuing certification. And so that, I mean, that's how we met. And
Mhm.
I just absolutely love working with you. And you have us, on a strict schedule here and on a, pretty good path to certification. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I'd like to introduce you to our guests here. So this morning I'm joined by Margo Olson. She is the project manager at Blinderman Construction. She's trained as an architect, and Margo understands both the design and construction processes, and her management style involves being a sensitive and effective bridge between the two. Her lifelong connection to nature has fostered an interest in helping our built environment successfully coexist with our natural one. So definitely a bridge, between design team and construction team. I agree.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'd like to start just by asking what got you into green building?
Yeah, so I grew up in Minnesota, so most Minnesotans have a strong connection to the environment and spend a lot of time outdoors. And the same was for me. Like I really grew up in a small town, but spent a lot of time outdoors. My family spent a lot of time outdoors, and my mom, knew all of the names of all the plants and animals, and we would spend a lot of time just like looking at things and trying to understand what they were, and hunting for various bugs and animals, and so it was just kind of I just had like an acute sense of nature since I was small, and that
Uh-huh.
really played into kind of everything that I still do, and the experience with the built environment too.
Oh, nice. So was it like a rural area that you grew up in, or just, I mean, you had a lot of open space, it sounds like.
Yeah, I grew up in a couple places in Minnesota, spent a couple years in Missouri, and then back to Minnesota. But yeah, rural areas, small towns, a lot of time for exploring and playing outside. So that's what I spent a lot of time doing.
Wow, it sounds like a lot like how I grew up, except my experience, well, I had a backyard, right? And I grew up
Mhm.
across the street from a park. But my summers, every summer, my family, we would drive to Mexico to visit family. And growing up, I mean, it was just like we would roam free in,
Mhm.
in nature, in just in the mountains. And it was just, I never knew it, but realized it then. But all of that, helped me foster that connection with nature. And when I was reading your bio, I was like, oh, it sounds very similar to mine. So,
Yeah, definitely. I think that once we spend time and notice, the ecosystems around us, it's really hard to disconnect ourselves again from that. Like we just really understand that
Mhm.
it's connected together, and it's important to maintain both sides of everything and really learn how to work with each other.
Mm-hmm. So you're trained as an architect, and what made you, how long were you working? Did you work in architecture? And then what happened that you made the switch over?
Sure, yeah. So I attended the University of Minnesota for architecture, started in 1998. So that again, kind of fostered the sense of um, sustainability in design, because University of Minnesota is a very practical school. It has a lot of roots in agriculture and the natural environment, forestry, all those kinds of things. In the larger school, but I think that definitely played a part in the built environment and how I was trained, and then foresaw being included in it. So the University of Minnesota was an important place to go. And then I ended up, yeah, I worked as an architect for 5 years for a small design build company here in Chicago. After working for a couple years in a fabrication company where I made things, fabricated and made metal things. So between, architecture and making things, I've always been like a maker. I really appreciate like the design and the construction and of anything really.
Mhm.
So I did work as an architect for a few years, but during that time we also built our own work. So I'm familiar and became familiar with the construction process, with communicating with contractors and being involved in that side of things.
Uh-huh.
After architecture, I decided it was 2010 and I was tired because it was like the end of the recession and I
Oh
had been working
yeah.
like 12 hours plus a day for like years and I was just tired. So I went to work for Discoto as an owner's rep with the charter schools, and it was really, really fun, like working with schools and really communicating and understanding what they needed, and then building what they needed. So
And were
mhm.
you did you start working on green projects at that time, or how did you
um, I
find yourself?
didn't.
Hmm.
No, I think the really the first most notable green project that I worked on was as an architect, as an architecture firm, working also as a GC. So we built a 10,000 square foot house in the Gold Coast that was a LEED gold home for homes. And it was back in 2010. So there was a lot of different, information at that point. It was under V3. So just trying to get through the process was a challenge at that time because subcontractors just really didn't know anything about the program, especially in residential. Manufacturers were still trying to figure out what LEED meant to them and what kind of products. The state of Illinois hadn't really gone through reuse of rainwater and gray water versus the black water versus using it for interior versus exterior uses. There was a green roof incorporated in this building, so it really provided me a space to understand like all of these different systems and how to execute them.
Wow, what an experience. It is, and it still is a challenge, in the state of Illinois to work with water. What other areas of the country are doing for water conservation, but I think we're getting there. It's just understanding the different solutions that are out there. It's not getting rid of, I mean, it's different building practices, right? You just the way it's going. It's innovation too.
It is, and I think at this point, a lot of the contractors and a lot of the regulations and also the inspectors are used to seeing these technologies now and understand how to evaluate them and make sure that they're safe. It really has come a long ways in the last 10 years.
Yeah, so I mean, it's understandable. There had to be some kind of a learning curve for green building. But um, you were talking in an earlier conversation, you mentioned your philosophy and these types of projects, which I
Mhm.
really liked. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy about how you run projects and in green building?
Sure. Stemming from that project in 2010, I really learned a lot about communication. So the most important thing is translating the intent from the design side over to the construction side in a really, really clear manner. Back in that time, a lot of things were really nebulous, as even on the design side, and then translating it over to the contracting side was difficult because there wasn't the language that we have now necessarily. There wasn't like the contract documents. We have a lot more tools now to be able to do that. And so the intent is really important, and it's really important to communicate that to the subcontractors so that they can execute the job in the way that they need to. General contractors don't have a lot of ability to pause to figure things out. It's like time is of the essence. We have to go. And so pre-planning can't be emphasized enough. We really need to, as the design team and as the contractor, come together, understand the intent, understand how to execute it, and then give very clear directions to those who are executing it so that there is not ambiguity later. So a lot of my time is spent figuring out that what's missing, what is needed to be able to go ahead and execute quickly and with decisiveness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that communication needs to be clear from the very beginning with all parties. You can't say, oh, well, she's the contractor, she's going to take care of it. Oh, well, she's the lead consultant, she's going to take care of it. Well, she's the architect. Well, it's, a lot of it. And sometimes in my experience, I come across different project teams, and it's good because you learn what works and what doesn't work. What's your experience in that sense? What are the key measures of keeping your team to run a successful project to
Yeah,
certification?
mhm. I think that team building is really critical, and it does stem from the project delivery method that's set up at the beginning of the project by the owner. So if there is a design build project, we have a lot more latitude to be a team earlier, or even a CM at risk project, there's that latitude to be involved earlier. If it's a design bid build project, there's not, by the time the project is bid and then in construction, there's not a lot of time to make any changes at all. So it really puts a lot of the weight on the design team, engineering team, and the consultants to do a really excellent job at communicating that, so that by the time it hits the contractor, they're able to execute on that. With the design build and the CM at risk, we have a lot more ability to um, add information and also be more of a bridge towards the subcontractors. So help fill in those gaps, help understand what products might be available or the price points at which those products are available. We have more of an ability to reach out to subcontractors and get earlier input, so that that is set from the beginning and that there's a clear path forward.
hmm How is it clear to you for a subcontractor that you say, okay, I can work with this subcontractor? Because a lot of times, they ask me, right? It's like, how do look, I've never worked on this type of project. I want to. And so some of what I do is I do training, to help
Mm-hmm.
them learn to be more competitive and be able to execute these types of projects. What is it that you look for that helps your team?
Right. Again, like it really depends on what kind of project it is. So if it's a private owner with a private project, there's more latitude to select subcontractors who may be good fit for the job specifically for that, and may bring something to the table and be able to work earlier um, with that embedded knowledge. If it's really a hard bid, like a lot of times, our public projects are, it's really important, again, to give the subcontractors the information ahead of time so they can be competitive. So they don't have to guess or try to figure out what the design team wants, that they're given a clear instruction and can go ahead and bid on it. That way it's more of a fair playing field, and that they can really understand what they need to deliver. Um, for the GC, is really about being a bridge too. So when subcontractors have questions, we can be able to answer their questions or point them in a direction that they can go find the information for themselves. So a lot of times I really rely on the reps, for their different projects. Because a lot of times they're not able to keep up on all the information, or may not know what's available. With V4, everything is changed now.
Yeah, and I
And
was going to
so
ask you
it's
about
not just
that.
something, yeah, they can't always just go and find out, quickly and easily, like what they need. So a lot of times the manufacturers reps are a little bit more up to date on everything and can, help the subcontractors. I do see that happening a lot more, today than 10 years ago. Like, it does seem like the manufacturers are making more of an effort to really keep up and understand and know their product and help their subcontractors, by preparing packages that their subcontractors can use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was definitely going to ask you about what do you think
Mm-hmm.
about the changes that you saw like once Lead V4 came out? For me, it was definitely a lot more about transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping keeping the project team accountable about what we're setting out to do, and especially on the manufacturing side, like you said, manufacturers are now being more, they're advocating too, for a healthy
Mm-hmm.
environment. And so what are your thoughts when that came out, the
Yeah, it's
new
a
version?
challenge. And it goes back to pre-planning. I don't think there's any way to go through a V4 project and like try to have an action happen during construction. There's just really no way. Like everything has to be pre-planned and down to every single material, really. I mean, for example, if you have a product that has an EPD versus a product that has recycled content and they don't have either or, which product do you choose based on the plan that you have ahead of time? So laying out that plan immediately is mission critical, because then you can start to fill in all the gaps. Then you can reach out and find the information that needs to be provided by the architect or the engineer or a subcontractor, and it has a whole plan in place before we go forward quickly.
Yeah, it'll prevent a lot of headaches
Mm-hmm.
afterwards and a lot of, dare I say, change orders.
Right, nobody wants that. Nobody wants changes. Nobody wants to do rework. Nobody wants to take this out and put that in because you needed like one more EPD. It's like,
Yeah.
if you know the plan ahead of time and then everyone can execute on that plan, that is really the only way forward in B4. There's also a lot more with the energy side of things and engineering, and that can really have a lot of impact on cost sometimes. So to have
Mhm.
GC and especially major subcontractors weigh in early on the plan and really understand like what that means and can start to put early pricing to it is really critical, so that owners can make good decisions and architects and engineer teams can make good decisions as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, energy definitely is now at the forefront, as it should have been too.
Mhm.
How buildings perform and how they operate and are maintained throughout their life cycle. And like you said, it's definitely pre-planning, even from the get-go. And that's why I just love working on these types of projects, because it's intentional and from the very beginning. So the architect, as architects, we need to look at modeling, the orientation, right, of the building. And so then we speak to the energy modeler, the engineer, and that they tell us how we're doing, right? And
Mhm.
oh, you can't
Mhm.
do that. Let's make some shifts here, architect. What are you gonna do? um, but then the communication continues, with the contractor, right? We talk about
Yeah,
costs.
absolutely. And I think
Hmm.
that the contractor needs to be a bridge. Like there really is no other way, and that's not something that contractors have traditionally done, especially even in subcontractors. Like they want to know exactly what to do and how to do it. They don't want ambiguity. They don't have time for it. Their pricing doesn't allow for it, and then you get into change. And whether they're good changes or forward changes or backward changes, it still changes and it still takes time. And time is money in everybody's world, owners all the way through the project team. So it's really critical to be efficient on everything. And it the GC really, I think, has to be more and more educated as we go on, so that we can
Hmm.
weigh into these decisions and have close relationships with the manufacturers and the subcontractors who are installing these equipments. And also just from sustainability, if we look at how things are going forward, there's a lot of more prefabrication that, will inevitably come, whether, Chicago adopts it eventually or not. I think that it's happening across the world. And so then you get into supply chains, and supply chains are automatically indicative of an environmental decision that we all make. And so that's going to be really important, I think, in coming down the pipeline to the future.
Yeah, so digging in just a little deeper into Lead V4, what
Mhm.
insight can you share with us as far as like challenges and opportunities for a project pursuing LEED certification?
In
Take for example,
V4.
yeah, and Lead V4. Take for example, like construction waste,
Mhm.
or I have construction waste. How do you document or
Mhm.
keeping track of submittals? The floor is
Pick
yours.
any and all.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think submittals actually are the biggest challenge in some ways, because the submittals come from the specifications, and the specifications are coming from the design team. And if the design team is organized or not organized, that directly affects the submittals and the ability to collect successful submittals and then have the subcontractor execute on those exact submittals. So I think that is the challenge, because in V4, if you have to lay out all of the information ahead of time and create the goals, we don't really have a great tool to show like what it's meeting and how. Like like in the school projects, we've seen everyone basically come up with like a completely different way of trying to track the information for V4. It's really tricky.
When was
Um,
your first Lead V4 project? When is it the schools or was it another project?
yeah, the
Yeah, the schools.
schools,
Okay.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that is, a challenge of that is that there are a lot of materials, and they're specified for a specific way. But I've had, maybe as like have had some success with Green Badger, because it's a product that is available now that will take product database, and then you select the products or input the products, and it will distribute them among all of the different applicable points that they fall into. So that's the only one that I know of that does that, but there may be others. I'd be
Mhm.
interested to know. But I think it'll be interesting to see how the industry kind of catches up with how to, um, especially on the contracting side, um, organize all of the information that comes in and just make sure that it's tracking, because it's still very manual at this point.
Yeah, I think we're all definitely trying to work with each other to figure out. I mean, Lead V4 just said, boom, here you need, here get your EPDs, your HPDs, and it made the manufacturers more accountable, right, about how healthy their materials are, how they're being manufactured, what they put in them. And so what the EPDs and HPDs, they're a third party certification that yes, this project is legit healthy, right? And so yeah, I mean, when that came out, it was definitely a game changer. And I'll repeat again what you said. It is the pre-planning for sure. Going back to the specifications and making sure that we are making it very clear. So by the time it gets to you, then you do have a plan. But with Green Badger, so can I ask you about Green Badger? So it's like a catch 22, isn't it? Like, would you go to Green Badger to look for maybe materials that you want on your project, or do you submit these materials into Green Badger to see if they meet the requirements?
Both. So they have an embedded library of materials that are already vetted by them and will meet the different criteria. Alternately, there's a way to put in your own, but then you have to read through the EPDs or the HPDs and put in the criteria that makes it, I guess, compliant for the project. So both ways. I've definitely combed the internet for a lot of materials and data and documentation, and it's really fragmented still right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know the manufacturers are taking time to catch up to V4, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've definitely found is that the major manufacturers, like Interface, like Georgia Pacific, like
Mm-hmm.
those really major manufacturers are caught up, but even they still are missing information. It's still spotty sometimes. All of their product lines aren't covered yet. uh, I know they're like reformulating products to your point to make them more conducive to sustainable and green building. But like the smaller manufacturers just haven't and can't maybe at this point get caught up with that. And so I do think it's a little bit of an issue because we want to support our small manufacturers and also our
Right.
small businesses, but yet if they don't have this documentation, they get left out. So again, it goes back to the planning and like how do we make really important decisions on which products to use, which manufacturers, which systems, so that we can be democratic too about our selections and our support of the green systems.
Yeah, one of the other things that I like is that now it's opened it up to, and we saw this with Living Building Challenge certification, as they opened it up, giving us credit for equity, providing
Mm.
an equitable project team. And now, from what I understand, this is a credit that you're pursuing, right? Or
This
did,
is a credit
yeah.
that we're pursuing on a school project, and it's basically based on union labor and apprentice labor.
Hmm.
So that's one step and one part of the equitable building. It's something that should be looked into more detail going forward. I think again, it's like pre-planning, and on some of these projects, there's just not enough time to like pull together all the information and all the people and be organized by the time that the project starts. So if that's identified, I think it's more conducive to some sorts of project delivery methods, such as design build, such as CM at risk, rather than a design bid build project, or sometimes a CM at risk project with a very strict deadline. It just needs time to
Right.
be able to formulate and organize everybody. But that's something that I think is really important, and I'd like to spend more time on. And also that's where we go into like educating the workforces, educating our
Yeah.
peers, and educating our building communities, and as to how to put those together and be successful.
Yeah, and I mean, it can only evolve from where it is
Mm-hmm.
now. So, and again, with the Living Building Challenge, they have a Justs label, right? And so that means just that you have an equitable team, like a diverse team, women and people of color, and wages, and what is your
Mm-hmm.
even like HR policies too. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
it's something that it's a nice, healthy environment to work in, right? But speaking of women in construction, so what is that like, leading a project, as a woman in construction?
Um, it's fun. I mean, like
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I love the design world and the construction world and seeing things built. So I think for me, my point of view has always been something that I really am interested in, and that's really kind of carried me through this career. I came from, as I mentioned earlier, kind of an architecture side and an owner's rep side, although I felt familiar and comfortable in a construction side at that point. That was by a weird career turn, not because I spent summers out with my father, like being a carpenter on a job site, like how so many men get involved with construction.
Right.
I worked in a fabrication studio that was a safe place that I could be a student and learn that technology. And then being out on the job site as an architect, I would go draw my drawing as a young person, and then run out to the job site and they'd be like, oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no. Start over. So it was like a really good learning experience. And I think, being female in the construction world is a little bit of an anomaly for certain. But I do think I do have a lot in common with, the others around me, and just interested in and loving the industry itself.
Hmm.
I see a lot of young women coming into construction now. We have several at our firm that are great and super smart and super ready to be involved. And I think that's really great. They come from engineering backgrounds, but just like have a passion for building. And I think really that's what's important.
And we're
And we just
multitaskers.
multitaskers.
Multitaskers, and we need to organize and think about this and think about that. And so,
Yeah. And I think we just need to support them and make sure that they have, um, safe, comfortable spaces to be their best. And that's what's really important.
oh, that's great. No, it's great to have you, to have been working with you, because that, like I said, you've been on the project we're working on together. It's just you have a very clear system, that's working. So we've been in shelter in place for how long
Mhm.
now? 5 months, 6 months, going on 6 months.
10
Yeah.
years.
Oh my God, please no. But then it was announced that construction, you're essential workers. So you've been
Mhm.
working this whole time. How has that experience been in, keeping your workers safe? And we're all learning as we're going, right? We're figuring it out. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In the first few months, first few weeks were definitely evolving. Like every week, there would be more information and more knowledge. And, kudos to our safety director, Brittany. She really kept on top of everything and disseminated all of the information as quickly as we got it. Formulated a plan for everyone. And to this date we haven't had any COVID in our company,
Oh, great.
so that's excellent. But yeah, she really set a standard for our workspaces, as I think a lot of other GCs did. So we have distancing on our job sites. We have a wellness check-in, so everyone comes and does a wellness check-in. She's created individual QR codes for each of our job sites, so it can be a touchless check-in. And then we have lists of everybody on our job site, so we can check and maintain and monitor the health of our job sites. We've made uh, areas for people to eat lunch in, so we're not all on top of each other. The superintendents are working to keep people apart as much as they can. It's tough in construction, but I think everybody's trying to do the best they can. Masks are also important and required on our job sites. So there's a lot that's gone into it. We've managed to keep everyone safe so far, so we'll
Hmm.
continue to do that. As far as our company goes, I think we went through the same difficulty of like everyone all of a sudden is at home, and then how do we communicate? So a lot of our information is now virtual. We've done a lot of Zooming. We've integrated Teams like everyone else in the world. But it's
Yeah.
been good for us as a company because we have a Blenderman University, and I'm in one of the co-directors of the curriculum. And so every Friday we have a class, most Fridays. We set it up at the beginning of the year, and then we go through the year and choose and select topics that are important. We have, people in the company. There are our teachers, basically, and our class leaders, and we come up with curriculum, and then we disseminate that on Fridays. And so with this virtual world, it's actually been great because everybody across the whole company can tune in for that hour or two, rather than trying to figure out how everybody is coming into our office, for
Yeah.
a presentation. So I think it's really opened up a lot of information to our entire company and been a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting how those things just work out, how a challenge turned into an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
right? And just we're all, accessible this way too. I mean, honestly, and that's how designing healthy environments was born, right? It's like, how do I stay connected to, all the people that I work with, right? And I said, well, why not have specialty matter experts, and speak to them and share the wealth of knowledge in green
Mm-hmm.
building. So it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and it's really great to hear your perspective on green building and designing these healthy environments, because that's what, it's interesting that we are in a pandemic where our health is at risk right now with this invisible virus, but we're still, our role, we want to design and build healthy environments for a better future, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the biggest takeaway, like over all of the years, is that a healthy environment and a sustainable construction is not something you add on top of a traditional construction. Like that is the way that we need to build and execute our work.
Yeah. So there's one question for you. It says, Margo, since women are an anomaly in your field, was there anything you could do or thought you couldn't do on a job site because you're a woman? How did it feel once you did it?
Mm. I think I've developed my own way of talking to tradespeople and foremen and project managers, because being female and even, not as a tradesperson myself, like how do you engage them and get the best information out of them, and to be able to do the work the best way that we can. So I think like I've approached it always as like asking questions, and always said like, what would you do? How do you think we should do this? And so we can have a really cooperative environment on how we need to get something done. There's always information. So if I know something they don't know, or if I have a really specific reason of why we can't do something, I will tell them that, like, that's a great idea, but
Hmm.
so I think just engaging in that way instead of coming from a place of, other is like the office, oh, somebody's coming from the office. No, it's like, no, we're a team and we'll all work together to figure this out. And being female, I've had to find my own approach to that.
Hmm. Yeah, I did work construction for a couple years earlier in my career, and I remember the trades. If I'd go in and check on a job, and I'd get these comments saying, "Oh, well, you're way smarter than me. You're educated. You went to college," and I'm like, but I'm not a you know plumber, certified plumber. I don't know what you know. It's like
Right,
it takes both of us, right?
right,
I'm
exactly.
not, I didn't pass the electrical exam like you did. It's just it's a different trade, right? It's different
Right.
types of
It's a different
knowledge.
knowledge.
Yeah. So I remember getting those comments a lot, is that, the architects would walk in, and it's just like the glorified architect, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but it shouldn't be that way, right? Because we're not out there building it. I mean, we're but yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about, so you're working on schools. What other green building projects are you working on?
Well, that's the one I have right now. We worked for the Army out at Arlington Heights, and built a reserve center, and we just got lead gold on that project. So that was, or
Congratulations.
sorry, lead silver on that project. So that was exciting. That wasn't one of my projects. I don't work on all of the green projects in the
Okay.
company. I just am working on the projects that I'm involved in. So the schools are the ones that I have right now that I've been working on the most. But I'm in the process of writing just an introductory guideline for the company to introduce, kind of what we need to do for mobilization and inside of our own company to be as sustainable as possible. Like, where do you source the things that we need to operate every day? Like, maybe there's companies that we prefer to buy from rather than others. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something I've identified as something that our company needs, and I'm working on that so that we can be internally the best we can, no matter what our
Wow.
external projects are.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's gonna definitely put you guys at a different level, changing the game, right? To
I
hope.
hope so. Yeah. And it just takes a lot of time and education and why, why we do these things. So I did one class on V4 this year for our Blenderman University. So I'll probably end up doing a few more
Oh
going
yeah.
forward, just so everyone can start to be more familiar and really understand like why we do what we do.
Yeah, how do those classes go? Are they well received? Do they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially remotely, people can tune in and, kind of do other things and then also watch and also, get information. But yeah, we're not a huge company, but we can get, 20 out of or 30 out of 40 people that work at our company. That's a pretty good turnout, I think.
that is. Yeah, that's a CPS school classroom, maybe. But not anymore. Not these days, right now, anyway.
And
But
no,
yeah, so well, thank you so much, Margo, for joining me this morning. I hope that you continue to stay safe and run a safe construction site. And let's continue on this project. So soon we'll submit our project
yeah.
for review, and I
Mhm.
can't wait. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe by the end of the year we'll have news of another lead certified school, right?
Yeah, I
So
really look forward to that.
wonderful. So once again, thank you for joining Designing Healthy Environments, where we design healthy for you, for Earth, and for all. So
Thank you
have
for
a
having me.
healthy
Have a good
day,
day.
Margo.
Bye.
Bye bye.